Times were tough, so I sold my soul. And I don't think I'll ever regain control. Devil looked me in the eye, and I looked the other way. What else could I do? I just stared at the doorway, knew I'd rather be drunk with you. I'd rather be drunk.
Hey Internet, Dracofunk here, and welcome back to my Reusable Space Program. This is episode 15 of Season 2. This season we've been doing Duna operations, and today we are going to continue that with this spacecraft. It uses an unusual launch vehicle. This is the first time I believe I'm using this launch vehicle. And we are just going to try and get it into orbit. Now, I believe I've made a mistake with this launch vehicle. It turns out this might have been a little bit overkill for what I need. And here we are. So there's the spacecraft we are launching. And this spacecraft is going to be the tanker for the Duna system. I had originally... Whoa, that's a little bit unstable. Whoa, okay. So this launch vehicle, I'm going to need to adjust it some. But I am in an orbit. I'm just going to discard this. Originally, the side boosters were going to be ejected, but it managed to get into orbit with all of the stages there. So the other mistake is apparently there is no control units on the booster. There are parachutes, and I do plan on recovering it, but I'm going to have to send up a special recovery operation now in a later episode, and much later episode. So I'm just going to go ahead and use the tanker to circularize. It's got plenty of fuel on its own. And I'm going to have to keep renaming this because I get the priority all wrong. That's okay. So there's the tanker. Now let's get some tanks for it. Now these are the same tanks I've used for the Mun and Minma stations, and I think I already have one at the Duna station. And there's all my reusable boosters exploding and stuff. Now, the plan is that I'm going to be sending up several of these tanks and sending them to the Duna system for various... or with various spacecraft. I'm going to send 2 with the tanker. Now, eventually the tanker will have its own tanks. These I'm going to actually send to the station in orbit of Ike, and they will live there permanently. But I'm just going to launch these 2 and place on the back of that tanker. And those boosters flew off without exploding. And there goes the jet engines. They flew off without exploding. I need to get a little bit better with my booster game, trying to make sure they don't explode all the time. I am starting to collect a fair amount of spent booster stages in orbit, I'm going to have some sort of landing party, as in a party where I land a whole bunch of these reusable boosters back on the surface. I don't know if you heard the cat yelling at me in the background. I don't know why she's yelling at me. Now, the plan is to send 2 of these boosters on the tanker, as well as I'm going to send the front booster that's currently on the Canterbury, that's been the tanker going from Mun to Kerbin orbit, also, because I'm going to send that as part of the Ike station. And the reason for that is it has an ore tank on it, and at some point in time, for some reason, I thought the ore tank would be good to have on the tanker, but it's never hauled ore. It's only used the ore tank like once when it was docked to the Mun station, where I left it there and brought a load of ore up, and then converted all that ore to monopropellant. So it's not really useful, and it would be more useful to have a fuel tank there. So I'm going to launch a new fuel tank for the Canterbury, and I'm going to take that fuel tank to Ike. Because we don't want to waste anything, any resources, any piece of equipment if we can help it. So now we have the Ares 3 craft is just going to bring all these fuel tanks to the tanker. So you're going to see me do a lot of docking maneuvers. And I'm just doing all this visually. And you get to see it sped up 4 times as opposed to my whole real-time experience. And I get it lined up using the nav ball, or at least almost lined up. Close enough. Whoops. I hit that a little hard. Now I'm way out of whack. I'm all out of alignment. See, some people would crossfade to just that perfect docking alignment, but nope, I'm going to show you all the mistakes I made. And I'm going to take some fuel from the booster to refuel the Ares 3 so I can keep it flying. If I get too low, I can always go back to Enterprise Station and refuel there. But that would add some time, and I really don't want to have to do that. The only time I want to go back to Enterprise Station is in between missions. Now, some people see this as cheating. I'm using the rendezvous planner to get a rendezvous. If you don't want to do that, it is possible to get the rendezvous without this. You just eyeball your plane alignment, get it as close as you can, and you want to be in a higher orbit than your target. And then you want your target coming up behind you, and then just do a maneuver node and get as close as you can. If you can get within like 2 kilometers of your closest approach when you lower your orbit, you're in a good spot. And then make sure that you're switched to target, and as you come up on your closest approach, you want to burn retrograde to stop to the target, to stop, basically to bring your velocity close to 0, and then you can just head towards it And I'm having a little bit of a problem docking here as the tanker is turning every which way. And like they're trying to point at each other. I don't know why the tanker itself is moving around. There we go. That was not the cleanest docking maneuvers I've ever done. But that's one tank down. I got one more to go, and then we'll have to find the Canterbury and see where it is. So I've been on I've really been pushing, trying to get Season 2 completed and bring the Duna system fully online. And I realized there's still some stuff to do in the Kerbin system. And it's because of the issues I had with the accident that kind of put off the Reusable space program for several months. And there's still, the Minmus does not have a mining ship. So Minmus Station really should be doing its own mining operations, and it hasn't been. It's only done one before the mining ship broke apart and had to be sent back. So I need to send another mining ship there. And the other thing I really didn't do that I had intended to do was on the Mun and Minmus, I planned on having more surface operations. I do have a surface base on both moons, but neither moon has a rover, and there's only one base. In reality, I intended to have several bases, at least 4 bases on the Mun, and at least 2 or 3 on Minmus, and I planned on landing a rover, and I still want to do that. It's just I haven't really found the time. I really wanted to put a North and South Pole base, maybe not the big colony base like I put, but I want to put a North and South Pole base on the Mun, and I want 2 bases on Minmus, one up high and one down low. I think the current one is on the flat plane, so I could put one up high. And I did want a rover, or at least a small rover, to go in between them. And I might even send like the rover train. That all this would require at least a ship that I can land the rovers with, which I have the design in my head. I've never quite put it together in Kerbal Space Program, at least not in this save. So that's something I might do in the future. Maybe Season 3, because I think we're actually coming up towards, well, I think this season will have 24 episodes on it. I say we're coming towards the end. In reality, this is what, episode 15, so that's 9 more episodes. Yeah, so I haven't really decided what I'm going to do for Season 3. The two most logical things to do would be Eve or Jewel. The only thing about Eve is I don't know. I've done some casual experiments, but I don't know if I can build a reusable Eve Ascent craft. I've seen a few people do it, but not very many. Anyway, here is the tanker. It is only missing the center monopropellant and ore tank from the Canterbury. Now, I could end the episode here, but I've ended the last 2 episodes short due to stuck docking ports. So here, let's just keep going. This is the replacement tank for the Canterbury. It has 2 monopropellant tanks and another liquid oxygen fuel tank that I'm going to put on the front portion of the Canterbury. And it also uses the style of nose cone. And I probably should have put the more aerodynamic shield version of the docking port. But I didn't, because that's what's on the current one. And as you can see, my side boosters all flew off without exploding, and those seem to fly off without exploding. And I'm just going to get to this in about a 100-kilometer orbit. Now, in my mind, I intended on the Ares 3 to dock with this craft, but at some point in time, I changed my mind. And I'm actually going to have the Canterbury itself fly out here. So it's going to have I left some extra fuel on it, because I realized the Canterbury is at Enterprise Station. So I'm going to undock it here and leave that tank at the space station. And the Ares craft will fly to the space station and pick up that tank to deliver to the other tanker, so I've been naming all my tankers after tankers from TV shows and movies, science fiction TV shows and movies. So I named this tanker the Canterbury after the ice tanker from The Expanse. And the other tanker I named the Nostromo from the Alien movie. I will be building another tanker or 2, depending on where I travel next. Either it be Eve or Jewel. I do plan on putting a small station and operation stuff in orbit of Dres and Moho and even Elu eventually, but probably not to the extent of like what I'm doing in the Duna system. And I could do something similar to what I've done in Duna in the Eve system. I still don't know how I would do Eve surface operations. I could always just land stuff there with the sole realization that they may never come back up again. But anyway, the Canterbury itself has rendezvoused with this tank. So what I'm going to do is bring it up alongside the booster and pretty much get it close by and aligned up, and then I will undock the booster from the tank and have the Canterbury just slide over and dock with the booster. I'm having a little bit of a trouble trying to get this aligned, and this is one reason I redesigned the tanker for the Duna system. Is I originally liked the design of the Canterbury. I think it's different, and I wanted to give it more of a science fiction tanker feel, which I think it has, but the placement of the RCS thrusters makes docking not the easiest. And also, it's not 100% stable. Meaning, whenever I fly it, it eventually wants to turn left or right, and I have to kind of keep everything established going the direction I want, which is fine. But hey, let's do some in-view docking there. And now we have the Canterbury is ready to go. Only thing left to do is to send the Ares 3 back to Enterprise Station to get that the original tank that I just took off I didn't take off, I left there from the Canterbury. Now, wherever I end up going next season, I want to do. I think I can do this I can get everything set up in far fewer launches. Whoop! Overflew the station just a little bit, but I am close by. So maybe what I do is I'll just do some exploration missions. I think I'm going to send the Manly to Eve here soon. And I'll send at least one relay satellite with it, just so I can be deployed. I'm also thinking that it's time for Jebediah to do some more exploring. And he has his own little ship, the Liberator, that I believe what I think I'm going to do is launch 4 relay satellites, put one on top in the front of the Manly, and then the other 3 on the docking ports of the Liberator. Alright, now I have the tank, and only thing left to do is to rendezvous back with the Nostromo, which, because I have all the name priorities wrong, is now renamed again the Ares 3. And that's going to happen after every time I dock with it, or undock. Just because I keep messing up with the name priorities, and I had everything set up at one point in time, but it's been a while. But I'll go ahead and I'll fix that in a later episode. I promise I do. I've actually already recorded the episode where I fixed it. I'm actually really happy. I've done a lot of pre-work on the series, and I've actually recorded several episodes into the future, and actually edited several episodes in the future, just waiting for commentary. And at the time of recording this, I am several weeks ahead. Whoops there. So see, was actually controlling from the wrong direction of the craft there for a second. And right here, something went wrong, and my encounter is not quite where I would like it to be. There we go. So, something, I'm not exactly sure what happened, but something was off, like way off. I was hundreds of kilometers away from where I should have been. And I was going to try and catch it in the rewatch, and I didn't. I'm not really sure what went wrong there. And I've had a couple little incidents like that where my maneuvers somehow end up slightly off. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's related to the sudden sphere of influence changes that we've had when doing a Duna encounter. But it's like somehow the orbits during time warp reset and things ended up not where they were supposed to be. So I ended up hundreds of kilometers off. But this time I redid all the maneuvering and I ended up basically where I needed to be. Now the only issue is, in order to dock this fuel tank to the tanker, I need to move to the other side. Now, I could have done this at the space station, but it just made sense to do it once I arrived at the tanker. So I will get it pretty much close to lined up with how I want to dock with the tanker. And then I'm going to undock the Ares craft and flip around to the other side so I can push the tanker in. Now this happens like on the this is kind of like a railroad maneuver. You pull the car to where you want it, and then you have to detach and do what's called a runaround maneuver to get on the other side so you can shove it into place. And that's when you push a car into its location. They call that a shove. And that's basically what I'm doing here. I mean, in space, you don't need like special runaround tracks like you do on the railroad, but it's a very similar concept. So, because of that little maneuver, I'm not going to fly this to Duna this episode. We'll go ahead and do that next episode. But thanks for watching, guys. This has been episode 15 of my reusable space program. And next episode, we will send this to Duna as well as some other stuff. I think since we're going to do one more episode, I'll send 2 of the little RCS tugs along with it. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next week.